Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're setting our sights on some really remarkable places, the blue zones.
Right. These are geographical hotspots, scattered around the world where
Mm,
people consistently live exceptionally long and healthy lives.
exactly. Think Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia over in
Yeah.
Italy, and even Loma Linda, California, right here in the U.S., actually.
And what makes these blue zones just so compelling is well, this fundamental question they bring up about longevity.
Which is?
Is it mainly down to our genes, something we're just born with? Or is it, deeply tangled up with how people in these places actually live day in, day out?
That's the big puzzle, isn't it? And that's what we're going to try and unpack today, really digging into the evidence.
Yeah, trying to understand the relative weight of genetics versus lifestyle.
Precisely. We've been looking at various discussions, some research, basically exploring the science and, maybe just as importantly, the real-life observations from these incredibly long-lived groups.
Hmm.
So our mission for this deep dive is really to pinpoint those key elements driving their lifespan and their health span, those good years.
Right. The quality of life, not just the quantity.
We want to figure out what really sets them apart and, crucially, what insights might actually be relevant for you listening.
Makes sense.
So maybe we should start with the genes, the role our genetic code plays in all this.
Yeah, that feels like the natural place to begin.
Eh,
We often ask, did these folks just hit the genetic jackpot?
Right.
And look, there's definitely evidence suggesting genes play a part. They do influence our lifespan.
Okay.
Some studies actually estimate that these inherited factors might account for somewhere between 20, maybe 30% of how long we live.
20 to 30%. I mean, that's not insignificant. That's a decent chunk of the puzzle.
It is.
And we even have some specific examples, right, of this genetic influence in blue zones.
We do, yeah. For instance, researchers found specific genetic markers more common in people from Sardinia. And these markers seem to be linked with lower rates of heart disease. So that points towards a potential, genetic predisposition in some blue zone populations for better cardiovascular health.
Okay, so genetics clearly lays down some kind of foundation. But like you said, 20, 30%, that still leaves, what, 70 or 80%?
Exactly. A huge portion.
Which isn't explained just by genes. And this is where it gets, well, really interesting to me,
Uh-huh.
because it strongly suggests that even if you don't have those specific longevity genes, the choices we make every single day could actually have a much, much bigger impact.
That's precisely it. When we look closely at the blue zones, some really striking patterns jump out in their lifestyles, their environments.
So what are we seeing? Where should we start? Diet.
Let's start with diet. Yeah.
Okay, food.
Uh,
It's kind of amazing how across these really different cultures, geographically speaking, we find these consistent dietary themes.
It really is. And what jumps out, mostly plants.
Right. Beans seem to be a huge staple everywhere.
Beans, loads of vegetables, whole grains. That's the bedrock of their meals, generally.
And meat.
Well, meat, if it shows up, it's usually pretty small amounts, almost like a flavoring, rather than the main focus.
More like a garnish than the star of the show.
Exactly. And it's not just what they eat, it's also how they approach eating that's quite interesting.
How so?
Well, many blue zone cultures seem to have practices that encourage, let's call it mindful eating, or at least not overeating.
You mean like smaller portions?
Smaller portions, yeah. And this common idea of stopping when you feel about 80% full.
Oh, the 80% rule. I've heard about that.
Right. And that probably has some real physiological benefits, maybe related to calorie intake, metabolic efficiency. It's quite a contrast to the sort of eat until you're stuffed approach we sometimes see elsewhere.
Definitely a different relationship with food. Okay, so diet is huge. But it's not just the food, right? Movement seems key too.
Absolutely. Movement is another critical piece. But again, it's important to understand what kind of movement we're talking about.
Not hitting the gym for an hour.
Not primarily, no. It's more about what people often call natural movement.
Okay.
Physical activity that's just, well, seamlessly built into their daily lives.
Like walking places.
Walking, yeah, gardening, maybe taking stairs, doing household chores without tons of gadgets. It's just part of the routine.
So it's consistent low-level activity throughout the day.
Exactly. Sustained, often low-intensity movement. And that seems to have really significant benefits, especially for metabolic health, cardiovascular health over the long run.
That makes a lot of sense. Less about bursts of intensity, more about constant motion.
You got it.
Okay, so diet, natural movement.
Yeah.
What else? We also hear a lot about community and purpose in these zones?
Oh, this is a really, really critical element, maybe even underestimated sometimes.
Really?
Yeah. In blue zones, you consistently see these strong social networks. Close families, yes, but also vibrant community life, a real sense of belonging.
And why is that so important for longevity?
Well, think about it.
I know.
Social connection provides this incredible buffer against stress
Ah, okay.
and against isolation, which we know can be genuinely harmful to our health, both mental and physical.
Right, that makes sense. And this idea of purpose, having
Mm.
a reason to get up in the morning, that sounds quite profound.
It really is. In Okinawa, they call it ikigai.
Hmm.
In Costa Rica, plan de vida. Different names, same core idea.
A reason for being.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Whether it's looking after grandkids, contributing to the community, mastering a craft, pursuing a passion, having that sense of purpose gives people a reason to stay active, stay engaged
So it motivates them.
deeply. That feeling of being needed, of having value, it contributes hugely, not just to lifespan, but to that health span we keep mentioning, living well for longer.
Okay, so we've got the genetic piece, maybe 20–30%, and then we've got these incredibly powerful lifestyle factors.
Mm.
The plant-forward diet, the natural movement, the strong community ties, the sense of purpose.
Right.
It really sounds like while genes might, give some people a bit of a head start,
A potential edge, perhaps?
it's the daily habits and the environments people live in that seem to be doing the heavy lifting for this exceptional longevity.
I think that's a fair summary. You could maybe think of it like this. Genetics provides the blueprint, the sort of potential layout for the house.
Okay, I like that analogy.
But it's the daily habits, the lifestyle choices, the environment that's the actual construction crew, the materials, the maintenance. That's how you build the house and keep it standing strong for a long time.
You can have a great blueprint.
But if you build with poor materials or don't maintain the structure, it won't last. Conversely, maybe even with a standard blueprint, good construction and care can lead to a very long-lasting structure.
I really like that. Okay, so for those of us listening, maybe we weren't born in Sardinia or Okinawa,
Right, most of us weren't.
and maybe we don't feel like we won the genetic lottery, so to speak. What's the takeaway here? Is this just interesting information, or can we actually do something with it?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And the really good news, the empowering part, is yes, absolutely you can.
How so?
Because the power of focusing on habits is that, unlike your genes, you have a significant amount of control over your daily actions, your environment.
Yeah.
You can essentially start creating your own little blue zone wherever you happen to live, regardless of your genetic background.
That is empowering to hear. So could you give us maybe some concrete examples, small things maybe, that could actually make a difference?
Sure. It doesn't have to be a massive overhaul overnight. It could be as simple as consciously adding more vegetables and, say, beans to your meals each day. Variety matters too.
Okay, more plants. What else?
Maybe making a deliberate choice to walk or bike for those short trips instead of hopping in the car. Finding ways to weave more natural movement into your day. Take the stairs, stand up more often if you have a desk job.
Right, build it in.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the social side. Making regular time for genuine connection with friends, family, community. It requires effort in our busy lives, but it pays dividends.
Prioritizing connection.
And finding or rediscovering activities that give you that sense of purpose. Could be volunteering, learning a new skill, mentoring someone, spending time on a hobby you love.
Things that make you feel engaged and valued.
Precisely. These are all practical steps anyone can start taking. Small shifts, done consistently, can add up over time.
So if we were to kind of wrap this all up, it really sounds like while genes definitely have a role to play,
They do, yes.
the overwhelming balance of evidence, especially looking at these blue zones, points toward our daily habits and the environment we shape for ourselves as the main drivers.
That seems to be the core message, yes.
Yeah.
The dominant factors appear to be lifestyle and environment. We can't change our genetic inheritance.
No changing the blueprint.
Right. But we have this remarkable agency, this power to influence our own health, our own potential lifespan, through the conscious choices we make every single day.
It really puts the power back in our hands in many ways.
It does.
This has been incredibly insightful, really fascinating stuff. So thinking about everything we've discussed today, all these blue zone principles, maybe here's a final thought for you, the listener, to take away. What's one small intentional habit inspired by these ideas that you could perhaps start weaving into your own daily life, starting, maybe even today, and just reflect on how that single change might contribute to your own long-term health and well-being? Definitely something worth pondering.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.